Team owner John Stanton speaks. Plus, the Seattle Mariners make a huge in-house promotion. That's all coming up on this episode of Bleav In Mariners. What is up, sports fans? What is up, Seattle Mariners fans? It is 5 full days into the offseason as I tape this episode of Bleav In Mariners, and the team has been very busy making a lot of news, some stuff that we've got to talk about, and most of all, the big news of the day, John Stanton, Mariners owner, coming out, making some public statements for the first time since the Mariners finished their 85-77 season, just a couple of games short of the wild card, and first place in the AL West. So we're going to break all those comments down, and I'll tell you why I'm not very happy with him, and I'm assuming that a lot of Mariners fans are kind of flipping their nose at those comments that John Stanton made as well. What is up? Schultzy sitting in with you, or Jordon Schultz, whichever one you know me as or want to call me, a Pacific Northwest talk show host here, breaking down all the latest Mariners news, and that today involves a couple of big pieces. I guess then like one little small piece as well. We'll get to that. One roster move for sure being decided. And then as of a couple of days ago, we know what the Mariners are going to do with one of their option players. So we'll get into those little bits of news near the end of the podcast. But first, wanted to address the very, very long, in-depth article that Daniel Kramer did with Mariners owner John Stanton, basically kind of an all-encompassing postseason interview about, where the team is at. Really did a good job, I think, asking the questions that fans really have on their minds. And it really, it's really crappy that we don't get a press conference, but this really is the best that we can ask for in lieu of a press conference. And once again, major credit to Daniel Kramer for asking all the questions on Mariners fans' minds. So, it wasn't like on video in front of the entire room of reporters and Seattle Mariners media, but at least it seems like John Stanton did answer all of the questions, albeit maybe there weren't some things that I liked that he said. And I think there are a lot of things that we'll go over that a lot of other Mariners fans didn't really like either. But as I said in my last episode of Bleav In Mariners, we need to get some answers. And yeah, maybe not the ones that we're looking for, but we did hear from Mariners owner John Stanton. So we'll get into that here in just a second. Really quickly, though, did want to highlight a huge, huge in-house promotion that the Mariners made, announced to Friday just before I started taping this podcast. And that is Kevin Martinez promoted to president of business operations. Congratulations to Kevin. A huge, huge in-house promotion for the Mariners. He's been with the team for 34 years. I mean, just love hearing those stories. We all kind of dream of being like that guy that like starts in the mailroom at one point in our lives and then rises up to the top of like leading a baseball team or, your favorite sports organization or like a big old Fortune 500 company or something like that, whatever your aspirations were at different points of your life. But so cool to see that happening here in Seattle for a season that's just been filled with like slugging through the mud and, stories amok just of negativity and having to try to find the positives and living and dying on every win, seeing a manager fired, just the ups and downs that we've had to deal with, seeing one of the franchise favorites brought in to replace that fired manager. I think it's pretty cool to see just some pretty standard good news here. So Kevin Martinez, he had been the Mariners senior vice president of marketing and communications. I believe he was in that role since 2017. I'm looking at this from Lookout Landing. But very, very nice news. 16 years as vice president of marketing, and then was promoted in 2017 to marketing and communications VP manager, originally hired back in 1990 as the club's promotions manager and promoted to director of promotions in 1993. So essentially, he's been running the show as far as like the marketing goes for this team. He's really been shaping for 4 decades, the advertising, the social media content that you see, all the digital stuff that we've seen kind of. And I do think that the Mariners were on the precipice a few years ago of some of this stuff, like putting their content out there available to watch immediately. I feel like it was easy to be a Mariners fan, and that's something I do believe Kevin Martinez is very, very smart about. He knows that access is the main barrier to interest most times, right? So, despite all like the root sports and crappy TV handling of different things throughout the years and different costs being associated with watching Mariners games, Kevin Martinez has been on the forefront for this team of helping people get that content online. So really cool to see him being rewarded for that. He's also, I did not know this before reading this article, he's actually been in charge of all of the Mariners retirement ceremonies, or I guess the Hall of Fame inductions, the number retirement ceremonies, just the 3 of those, but the 11 Mariners Hall of Fame inductions, I think, is pretty awesome. And of course was instrumental in creating the 3 statues for Dave Niehaus, Edgar, and Griffey that we all have to honor our team's legends. So just a very integral part of the organization, Kevin Martinez. It's been fun to see him. He always makes comments on Twitter. He's very, very out there as a Mariners front office member, as a Mariners upper brass guy. And it's just very cool to see somebody, so everyday man, just like the dude that just like you kind of would love to go have a beer with, is one of these guys now that is making the decisions at the top. President of business operations for the Seattle Mariners, of course, replaces Katie Griggs, who left, really hightailed it out of Seattle, a month and a half ago, maybe 2 months now, to go take the same position with the Baltimore Orioles. She cited family being, on the East Coast, and that was something that she had struggled with. And I kind of wonder, I do love that the Mariners have just made this hire in-house, given the position to somebody that deserves it, as opposed to kind of checking a box with the hire. And I'm not saying Katie Griggs isn't qualified, but it feels like it's a little more of a checking of a box hire when you're going after somebody that has no connections to Seattle, that's literally on the other coast, still has family on the other side of the country. And from my memory, if that serves me correctly, I do believe that she still had her family, or at least part-time, her husband or whatever was still living back on the East Coast. So it's nice to get somebody that's going to be all in, for the Seattle Mariners organization as their president of business operations. And I would say it's nice to move on from the frustration of hearing about a president that didn't want to be here. So yeah, congrats to Kevin Martinez, new president of business operations for the Mariners, shaping the way that we have watched the team over the past 3 to 4 decades. So good on him. Excited for him, and excited, really, obviously, he doesn't make the calls about the roster, but excited to see what he can do in that position going forward. Mariners Twitter, very happy about that move. I'm very happy about that move as well. All right, on to the tea, though. On to the really gritty stuff, and that is this article from Daniel Kramer. Gosh, I got to get him on the show, man. Daniel is just so good at. I love the questions that he asks when he gets the opportunity, because with Mariners Brass, you don't get the opportunity very often. And Daniel made sure, especially in this instance, to try to ask every single thing that Seattle Mariners fans have been wondering about for the past month, 2 or 3. Every single thing that I feel like I've brought up on this podcast is like an issue that I've had with Mariners ownership, or what Jerry DiPoto is doing, why he deserves, to be the general manager president going into next year. Sorry, it's Justin Hollander, general manager, Jerry DiPoto, the president, but you all know what I mean. Justin Hollander, they can say that he makes decisions all that they want, but ultimately the buck stops with Jerry DiPoto, and he's going to take credit when all that stuff goes right. And yeah, that's just the way that it is. But his all-encompassing article with John Stanton really addressed everything. And I'm talking all the tea, from the departure of Scott Service, all the way down to the payroll, and then finishing off with why Jerry DiPoto should be the president going forward. And there's really a lot to look at. So let's kind of break this up into pieces, and I'll react to little bit by bit as we go along. I'm going to get to the Scott Service stuff here in just a second, but I wanted to start off with where John Stanton tells Daniel Kramer, and the quote to start this part of the article off is, "I believe in Jerry." God, it makes me feel like we're talking about like Harvey Dent in The Dark Knight. If y'all remember, Christian Bale says like, "Oh, I remember those campaign ads with the, with the slogan, 'I believe in Harvey Dent.'" Yeah, nice slogan, Harvey. That's literally what I feel like we're getting. And no, I don't feel like John Stanton is like the Dark Knight in a good way right now. I feel like that's what we're getting in a stupid phrase with his defense coming for Jerry DiPoto at this point of the offseason. So Stanton's office on the other side of the wall from DePoto's. I think a lot of people have known that. So, of course, they are always in contact. You feel like these two are kind of thick as thieves. And you wonder why Jerry gets such support from John Stanton. Well, to start off, John Stanton says, I believe in Jerry. I asked the question, why? Why do you think that Jerry DePoto is the best person going forward for this job? In my last episode of Bleav In Mariners, I think that fans deserve that answer. And, well, here's John Stanton's answer, folks. I believe in Jerry. And Jerry is going to continue to lead our baseball organization into the future as president of baseball ops. And I believe passionately he is the right guy to do that. Of course, there was a question also asked by Daniel Kramer, like literally addressing everything that Mariners fans have heard about this offseason, addressing a couple of reports. I believe most of them, if not all of them, came from Ryan Divish and Adam Jude of the Seattle Times, talking about the fact that DePoto was basically already extended. And this is kind of the first public comment that we've heard from the Mariners or owner John Stanton or anybody with the organization, that Jerry DePoto is going to remain with the organization past 2024. Think about that. It's Friday, October 4th as I'm taping this. The Mariners missed the postseason, and we now, just today, finally got a public confirmation from the Mariners owner that Jerry DePoto is going to be the guy leading the organization going forward. That's just crazy to me. So beyond his defense of saying that he believes in Jerry, kind of going into the why, John Stanton was really pressed on this by Daniel Kramer, and Stanton says, I think he's developed a great set of systems. Also, Stanton does credit general manager Justin Hollander and says, with most of which did not exist, talking about these systems or existed in earlier stages of development. So really crediting Jerry DePoto for putting, the player development systems into place, like building up the young guys in the minor leagues. The Mariners consistently at the top of, at least in the top 10 of prospect rankings in all of Major League Baseball. And yeah, so we all see what John Stanton values here, folks, and that is kind of the talent hoarding, the acquisition of young prospects, and just kind of gleaming on those, because really it's cheaper to do that, right? And John Stanton doesn't say that, but you can tell he's a really big fan of the way Jerry DePoto does business and the way that he goes about acquiring players, because he does it in kind of a budget way. I was just telling my dad, I root for a poverty franchise, Dad. It sucks. After being in LA, seeing a Dodgers game recently, I now know I root for a poverty franchise. And just seeing the systems that the Mariners use to, avoid signing free agent hitters at all costs, and seeing owner John Stanton supporting that, it's pretty frustrating. So essentially, yeah, he does say he's disappointed with the Major League team, that he can't get past the hitting that was really bad. But then Stanton says he looks at other things that enable us to be successful in the future, and they're all pointing in the right direction. Of course, talking about the pitching staff, which, yes, we all know the Mariners have one of the best pitching staffs, if not the best pitching staff in the Major League right now. But guess what? We figured out this year, the 2024 Seattle Mariners proved to us it's not a guarantee with 5 great starting pitchers that you're going to get into the playoffs. You cannot get to the playoffs with a amazing starting pitching staff alone. You've got to have hitters too. I think it's much easier to get into the playoffs with 3 amazing starting pitchers and then a couple of better hitters than the Mariners have, as opposed to an anemic lineup most of the year and 5 great starting pitchers. If you don't have a lineup that can support the starters, then what's the point? So essentially, we're hearing everything that we expected to from team owner John Stanton, talking about, the sustainable approach of building a team. He goes on to talk about the budget and says that it will go up, that, of course, yes, we plan to increase our payroll, but once again, Jerry DePoto, in his comments right before game 161 in the dugout with the media, kind of that impromptu press conference, DePoto said, most of that uptick is going to be because of all these in-house raises. Julio Rodriguez going from $8 million to $20 million in his contract. Got a bunch of guys going to arbitration now. So you're talking like what? 25, 30 plus, maybe 35 million added to like whatever the base of salaries are going to be this year. And that does include Mitch Haniger and Mitch Garver at around a $30 million clip. It is going to be a big number. DePoto's not wrong, but he's saying that because he has to pay players now. So it's not the kind of raises that we're going to want to see handed out on the salary cap. It's going to be guys that are already here, and we're not going to be seeing those big name free agents being pursued because, as John Stanton told the Seattle Times in June, it's a matter of strategy that they just don't do business like that. So frustrating. And in this article, actually, Daniel Kramer does point out that the Mariners payroll sits with an unofficial estimate, mind you, at $125 to $130 million at the offseason's outset. So you wonder, from the $145 that they spent this year, how much more they are actually going to have to spend, because they will be able to clear off some of this cash. Jorge Polanco's option, most likely not going to be optioned. And actually, we did hear pretty much for sure, looking at it, Adam Jude of the Seattle Times earlier this week said that the Mariners are expected to decline the team option on infielder Jorge Polanco. So yeah, $12.5 million there saved. But of course, that still means that you've got an opening at second base. You've got an opening at third base that you need to fill. Probably have an opening at DH that you need to fill as well. After listening to what Jerry Dipoto said, you can go to the last episode of Bleav In Mariners to catch all those comments. If you missed anything and missed what I was saying, reacting to Jerry Dipoto's impromptu end-of-season press conference in the dugout, basically before the 161st game of the season. So beyond the belief in Jerry Dipoto, which to me, I'm not really seeing many quotes as to why Jerry Dipoto actually does have the ability to lead a team to the playoffs going forward. He has the ability to build systems. He has the ability to put a program into place, but I haven't really seen or heard anything in this article that tells me that John Stanton actually knows that Jerry Dipoto can finish the job and get them to a World Series. One other big point of contention that owner John Stanton did address in the article was the firing of Scott Servais and that leaking to the media before Scott Servais himself was able to be told by Mariners brass. Of course, we've all heard it by now. If you've been living under a rock, though, and you haven't heard it, the Seattle Mariners absolutely bumbled the heck out of the Scott Servais firing. He found out about it on either a tweet or a sports ticker. I think Ryan Divish said it was a tweet on social media. And essentially, that was a couple of hours before his scheduled meeting with Jerry Dipoto. So, guy that he's been friends with for almost 3 decades, he didn't even find out directly from him that he was losing his job. And that is a huge problem. The reason being, allegedly, according to multiple sources, a leak from the Seattle Mariners organization itself was the reason why Jerry Dipoto was not able to tell Scott Servais directly. So Daniel Kramer did ask, why did this leak happen? Where did it come from here? So he asked all the right questions, basically saying that he has deep regret. John Stanton said that it leaked to the media and Scott found out from a source. Stanton was then asked how such sensitive information could be leaked. Stanton answered, I am highly confident it didn't come from within this building or from our ownership group. I know there's a very small circle of people who are aware of it, and I have a high level of confidence that those people did not say anything. And then, really great question, great follow-up by Daniel Kramer, asked if he knew where the leak originated then. And then Stanton says, to be blunt, I can't do anything about it, even if I knew exactly the answer to your question. It happened. It was terribly unfortunate. We've expressed, both Jerry and I, expressed our disappointment that it occurred. So hold on a second here. John Stanton, the billionaire owner of the Seattle Mariners organization, can't do anything to weed out a leak? Are you freaking serious? Yes, you can. Remember in The Office when this is after Kathy Bates took over and her company Sabre came in and bought Dunder Mifflin or whatever, and there was the smoking printers that Andy Bernard figured out, him and Daryl had made a video about or something like that. And Daryl figured out, oh no, this isn't a joke. This is serious. And that video ended up leaking out to the media. Kathy Bates, the lead character in that show at that point, basically said, or the leader of Sabre basically said, we're going to weed this out. And that's some little regional, whatever, paper printer company, that's not, I get that it's a television show, but I do feel like it's representative of what smaller companies do when there's some kind of information leaked like that shouldn't be out. I work for a media organization. I know that they would do everything in their power to find out where a leak came from. I don't know if they would have to hire private investigators. I don't know if there would be people in-house that could take care of that, but they would do something. And you're telling me that the Mariners have no intention of trying to find out what the leak is? Oh, we do know, but nothing to see here. That is the stupidest thing I have ever heard in my entire freaking life. He knows exactly where the leak came from, in my opinion, and he's just too nice to do anything about it. But then to sit there two-faced like this and to say, oh, you know what? I can't really do anything about it anyways. I'm not really sure if I had the answer that I could even do anything. So what's the point? It's terrible. It's unfortunate. We've expressed our regret, and now we're moving on. I mean, it's just the most ridiculous thing ever. I can't stand after somebody gets caught doing something really crappy or somebody gets caught in the middle of it or caught up with it. Well, you know, I just need to move on. No, you need to reflect. You need to spend some time figuring out how this happened and set your organization up or set your people up for it never to happen again. And it sounds like there's no priority there. There are going to be other leaks from the Mariners organization that we're going to hear that John Stanton and Jerry Dipoto are deeply disappointed about and deeply regretful of. It's just ridiculous. So team owner John Stanton did address kind of a little bit more about payroll and specifically what the Mariners are going to be doing going forward. But we actually don't have any more time. We're going to have to push that back to the next episode of Bleav in Mariners. I actually had planned to do kind of an off-season review and what I think the Mariners should be doing in this episode until the John Stanton article by Daniel Kramer came out. So really appreciate what Daniel asked. Essentially, to kind of wrap it all up, the real big takeaways that I've got are that Jerry Dipoto has some support, some sort of secret, high-level crazy support from John Stanton that he really can't actually tell you why, other than there's a good base here. There's a good foundation here. And I think we're going to make the World Series. I mean, he wraps it up, the article that way. He wraps it up with this quote. It's just ridiculous. It says, I love this place. I am present. I am here. I care deeply about this. I'm disappointed as any fan that this team hasn't been in the playoffs in 2 years. I can certainly understand why fans are frustrated when they hear me say that, but I believe we're on track, that a team has consistently won, will continue to win over a long period of time. I intend this team to win, have a winning record every season, be in the playoffs most season, and we will win a World Series. I don't believe it for a second, John. I just don't. But he's saying that he supports Jerry Dipoto, even while not giving out any public information when Jerry Dipoto signed a new contract extension before the Scott Service firing had even happened. So weird that they're just operating behind the cloak there. John Stanton did say in the article that he does believe that the players are going to be the biggest thing in the organization that people care about. Nobody wants to hear about managers or general managers getting extended. Well, that's crap, and you know it because you announced those extensions in 2018 and you announced that extension publicly in 2021. You don't do that when things are going bad. That's just your MO, Seattle, and it sucks that that's your MO. But yeah, so they are going forward with Jerry. This is the first time we've heard about it, and John Stanton has some regret about the way that the Scott Service situation was handled. But that's going to do it for this episode of Bleav in Mariners. We'll get to a Mariners offseason preview coming up in our next episode. Make sure you give the podcast a 5-star rating if you're listening on Apple, on iTunes, on Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Please follow the show as well. Just takes a second, and it's free. You can always unfollow later if you start to hate me or whatever. It's totally fine. And if you're on YouTube, make sure you give the video a like and leave a comment. Subscribe to Bleav in Mariners. We'd love to talk to you going forward about what your thoughts are about this team. Also, if you're a former Mariner or you know a former Mariner that wants a media opportunity, get in touch with me. Get in touch with Bleav, and we'll make it happen for you. Would still love to have a former Mariner on as a co-host regularly on this show. But appreciate you all, Mariners fans. Keep those tridents up and stay safe out there. See you soon.